Hello everyone, I'm back. I wanted to make a little video for everybody because most of us are under a kind of a house arrest due to a little something that's affecting the whole world. You may have heard of it. It's called the coronavirus. Yes, I'm sure you've heard of it. It's everywhere in the media. So please stay home if you can, stay healthy, look after yourself, look after your loved ones. And you may want to practice what they call social distancing or self-isolating. You know, it's a little something that the Jehovah's Witnesses have been doing to others for many decades. They call it shunning. Boo, yes, boo. Not cool. But I have to say that I missed our great community. There's a few of you within the community that I've gotten to know, and you are really great people. So I felt like it was a good time to say hello, to let you know that I'm still alive, I'm still out there, and I still think about you guys, and I wanted to just touch base and say hi to everybody. And also I wanted to share with you what just happened. I just got back from a trip to the west coast of Canada, and this is the place where I got the old boot. In fact, 20 years ago in July, it will have been 20, sorry, what am I trying to say? In July, in July of this year, it will have been 20 years since I got the boot. And you may be wondering, does anything change? You know, is there any kind of moratorium on the shunning? So we're going to crack open the champagne, we're going to do some little celebrating, and, and we're going to answer the question, does anything change after you've been away for 20 years? So it had been 4.5 years since my last visit to Victoria, where everything had gone down. And as much as I loved the idea of visiting Victoria, because I do have a lot of good memories there, I've got my family there, I've got some amazing lifelong friends there that I want to see, there was a part of me that was dreading it as well. It's kind of a twofold reason. First of all, I really did not want to deal with anybody shunning me. I can honestly say now that since my last visit to Victoria, I have fully awakened from JW.org. That's when I started making my videos. I hadn't made my videos before on my last visit, so I feel now that I really understand the diabolical nature of JW.org, the way they hide child abuse. I mean, these are things I didn't know about before. I knew they were a crappy organization. I didn't know that they had crashed through rock bottom and were really sickening and disgusting. So I was afraid that I would run into somebody and say something that I would regret. So I promised myself on my visit that I would keep myself in check and I would not do that. And the other reason why I was dreading going is that I have multiple sclerosis, as many of you know. And my walking has gotten worse since the last time I visited. And it's one thing when you're around friends who you know are rooting for you. Like if I'm in a party situation and I'm with, good friends, I don't feel as bad because I feel that these people are on my side. They're not laughing that I have a problem, or they're not wishing evil upon me. Now, I'm not saying Jehovah's Witnesses are wishing evil upon you, but I can just imagine what they're saying, that, oh, I left Jehovah, now look at me, or because you know how they like to prey on people who've got visible problems. So I can just imagine them saying, oh, things would be so much better if I came back to Jehovah, that Jehovah would bless me if I came back. But when I was pioneering, I can't tell you how many times I heard people saying, oh, Jehovah will bless you. And it wasn't true. Life just kept getting harder and harder and harder until I got the boot. So Jehovah didn't bless me, even when I was pouring everything into pioneering and every ounce of energy into JW.org. So I know that that's not true. So the big question is, after a 20-year absence, would my former JW friends want to see me? Would they want to say hi? Keep in mind that I lead a clean life. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not a smoker. I'm not doing drugs. I'm not doing any illegal activity. I have a wonderful husband whom I adore and a child that I love dearly. You could say I lead a Christian life. So there's really nothing that would cause people to feel that I should be treated like an outcast or like a subhuman or something. But I was told that the reason these people are shunning me is for what I did. okay? What I did that was so bad. And what I did was I left a crapola marriage. That's what I did. And on our trip, I ran into various ex-JW friends. And one of them, I guess because I'd posted some pictures on Facebook of our trip, and she goes, "Oh, you're in Victoria, I want to come and see you." So she came over and we had a nice chat, and she told me her whole story, which I didn't know all the details. And here in a nutshell is what happened to her. She was married to somebody, he was a ministerial servant. She was in my hall for a time period, and we used to go out in service together, so I know her very well, and I know him very well. But what I didn't know is that he was beating her, he was beating their kids. They drove from Victoria to New York, Bethel, on a Bethel trip. And on the way there, he's abusing the kids. Left them on the side of the road, left the whole family in a rage on the side of the road after beating them up in the middle of nowhere in Idaho or someplace. I mean, this guy ends up in prison. Social services ends up calling and saying to her, "If you do not leave him, we will take your kids away from you because we cannot have them in this environment." Then I was speaking to another girl, and she's telling me her story. And her husband, she was married to him for almost 30 years. But during that time, he was abusive to her. He was constantly berating her. He had, in a drunken driving accident, which many times he was an alcoholic, we'll just say. He killed somebody. And he did many other things as a result of his alcoholism. But what do these guys have in common, you might ask? Well, they are still in good standing. This is what they have done, and they are still in great standing in the congregation. In fact, when the second guy I mentioned, when his wife left him, he ends up within, I don't remember exactly how much time, but it was very soon after, let's say between 6 months to a year, he ends up getting remarried to another JW because he's such a desirable man, right? It's just so weird. So both the brothers remain in good standing, whereas the women, the wives and former wives of these guys, they end up being shunned. And the story can be rinsed and repeated so many times over. I ran into another friend, the same thing. Her husband, who was a ministerial servant in my congregation, ends up cheating on her, ends up running off with a pioneer sister, and he lies to the elders about it. She was heartbroken. My friend was completely heartbroken for what he had done. And she ends up being the one who is shunned by everybody. The bottom line is what all of us, the wives in this case, what all of us had done that was so bad was that we didn't come crawling back to JW.org. We realized there was a problem. We got out of our horrible marriages. We moved on with our lives, and during that time period of being away from the organization, we woke up. We realized that the organization is nothing more than a bully who is abusive all on their own terms. And when you don't come crawling back to this, then they have no hold on you anymore. But what they do have a hold on is your friends and family. And their strategy then is to discredit you, to run your name through the mud, to make you out to be this horrible, horrible person. And because you are silenced, you can no longer defend yourself. So all your friends and family then call you the name apostate or disfellowshipped or whatever happens to you. And when you just say the word disfellowshipped, you think, oh, right away as a Jehovah's Witness, your mind conjures up horrible thoughts. And so you immediately want nothing to do with these people who've left. And this is why all of us are treated so badly. The fact is, they don't want people like me to come back. Just like a bully doesn't like it when you expose who they are, because they don't want to get in trouble for what they do. They don't want people to find out the truth about who they really are. JW.org knows that people like me are on to them. We can't unsee what we've seen. We can't pretend we don't know what they're all about. And for all the times that they fear being blood guilty for not warning people, in all the 20 years that I've been out, never once has anybody ever reached out to me. You'd think that the elders would try. I mean, doesn't Jesus talk about searching out that lost sheep and leaving all the 99 sheep behind to find that one lost sheep? I should be considered lost to them. But they couldn't care less. And my so-called friends that I grew up with, all the years I spent with them, not once has any of them, not even one of them, have ever reached out to me to say, you know what, Armageddon is coming. You know, we don't want you to die. We miss you. Could you come back? Or why don't you just come back? Or why don't you just go for coffee with us? That's what that one friend of mine said when we were there. She never got disfellowshipped when I was visiting. She was the one whose husband ran off in the Caribbean with that other girl, the pioneer. She said, you know, I run into the witnesses sometimes on a Saturday morning, and they're all having their coffee somewhere, and they just treat her like she's not even there. She was never disfellowshipped. Nothing happened to her. And she's like, isn't it sad that my husband's the one who was adulterous, and he's the one who ended the marriage, and he's the one who lies to the elders, yet she's the one who loses everybody. It's, you know, now in the end, I just want to finish up by saying she did end up remarrying, and she's totally happy now. But she's just saying that, isn't it sad that these people treat her like she's got the plague? So the fact is, they don't want you to come back. They have no interest in bringing you back because they know that you're on to them. So while I was there, I was having lunch with a few friends, and I found out that my childhood JW best friend, her husband, who was a very prominent elder, he was in all the convention parts, and a lot of people looked up to him. I know her family thought the world of him. He ends up running off with somebody he worked with. Now, the JW organization is very black and white, as you probably know. He's the guilty mate. My childhood best friend is the innocent mate. But having seen them together and knowing her as I do, I remember always saying, I pity the guy who ends up marrying her. Not because she's a horrible person, but she was really nice to people who didn't know her. When you got to know her, her true colors came out, and she could be pretty bullyish and pretty tough. In fact, when I was around them, you know, for most of their married life, I wasn't around them. So nobody really knows what goes on behind closed doors. Let's be honest. But from what I did see, twice she forced him to call me up and apologize for things that he said that she thought might have offended me. And I'm on the phone with him, and he goes, yeah, Susan, I know you might be upset at what I said. And I'm like, what? You know, I don't know what the heck he's talking about. No, I'm not offended. I said, don't worry about it. Calls me up another time. Oh, I just want to apologize. And, you know, and he says that his wife wanted him to call me. So I know she put him up to this. And this is the kind of thing she did. She just grabbed him by the balls and she wore the pants. And she needed a guy who could really stand up to her. But he ended up running off, and now he's disfellowshipped, and of course she's the innocent mate. You know, she did nothing wrong, you know. Well, a friend of mine found her on Instagram, and she showed me her picture, and I'm like, oh, you know, that's her, yeah. And so I clicked on the follow button because I didn't really want to reach out to her. I just wanted to look at her pictures and see what's up. That's all. You know, just kind of stalk her behind the scenes. I'm kind of joking, but I did want to see what her pictures look like, okay? It's been 20 years. And she had a private profile. So when I clicked on the follow button, it sent her a message to say, you know, Susan wants to follow you. And what bothered me was that it wasn't enough for her to simply just say, no, I don't want her to follow me, or whatever. No, she had to go the extra mile and block me, like I'm, you know, Judas Iscariot or something. It was just, I don't know. And frankly, I couldn't care less if I spend I spent the last 20 years without her in my life. Does it matter if I don't ever see her again? No. But wouldn't it be nice to have a reunion and just say, hey, you know, what's up? You know, wouldn't it be nice to just touch base with someone? You know, you were my best friend. We spent every practically day of our lives from the age of 9 to the age of 20 together, spending the night at each other's houses, going camping, going in service, pioneering, going to school together. I mean, every day of our lives was practically with her, you know? So it's just kind of weird. But that's the way it is with this organization. You know, you just simply cannot be friends with them. And as long as she remains in the cult, I will never see her again. And like I said, I'm okay with that. But it's just sad. On the plus side, I got to hang out with some really great friends of mine. There was a girl I used to work with whom I really liked, but of course she was worldly. But then when I was pioneering, I started studying the Bible with her, and she was coming along as a JW. She has some really great parents, and every time my husband and I visit Victoria, they always have us over. So they're super nice people. But it got me thinking that, isn't it sad that had she become a Jehovah's Witness, now mind you, she stopped studying when I got the boot, so that was really great. So she never became a JW, but had she become one, I would have really, had her parents opposed her in her studying and in her witnessing, whatever, I would have encouraged the relationship to break up. It just makes me sick when I think about it, because her parents are such good people. And for all the times that JW.org says that, they build happy families and they're responsible for all these happy families, they actually don't, do they? Because the second that you oppose their propaganda, they find a way to discredit you, and they don't care if they obliterate your whole family, as long as they get more members, because more members equals more money. These pictures are used by the organization to depict their fictional earthly resurrection, but more likely, they depict families being overjoyed at being reunited after leaving JW.org. We also got to meet the wonderful Ben and Debbie Rancourt. They recently woke up and left the organization. Ben had told his fascinating JW story in a video with Lloyd Evans. I'll put a link in the description. Their 2 grown daughters are currently shunning them, but hopefully soon will wake up so the family can be reunited again. It was nice that I was able to visit with my family again. Some of them are in the organization and some of them are out. But it was very touching to see everybody, and it was hard to leave, I have to say. It's hard to say goodbye. But my sister-in-law wanted us to celebrate her birthday with her. We had never celebrated birthday with her before, and although it wasn't technically her birthday, it was a few days after we left, she wanted to throw a big party for herself. So that was really fun. That was really cool. So in answer to the question, does anything change after you've been out of the organization for 20 years? Do they give you, finally, okay, you've been out 20 years, you're clearly not coming back, but we don't want to spend the rest of your life not talking to you and shunning you. So let's just let bygones be bygones, accept the fact that you don't want to come back to the organization, and let's just say hi and be human beings. Do they do that? No. They don't. It's really, really sad. They're prepared to let you live the rest of your life without ever talking to you again, simply because you don't want to go back to their organization. Conversely, if this happened to them, and I know this for a fact because it's within their own publications, that when they leave worldly organizations to become a Jehovah's Witness, they portray the family that is, your family who's in the worldly organization or whatever, as being bitter and awful, and how could you do this, And yet you're supposed to be like, oh, well, I left for the truth, But when you leave their organization, when you leave JW.org, you are portrayed as bitter. You can't have it both ways. But, they view it as persecution when you treat them badly, and when they're treated badly for leaving worldly organizations like the Catholic Church or whatever. But you can't do it to them. It's insane. It's really silly. But at the end of the day, it's all good. I'm just so happy to be out of it. It's just sad that I have to even think about this, The sad thing is I will always have to think about this as long as I have family members within the organization. And that is the bummer. But it is what it is. The other weird thing about it is that the organization is happy to protect their pedophiles and their wife beaters and their child abusers. These guys who do these things lie to the elders, and the elders must know what's going on, but they're okay with it. And the victims of these abusers, and the ones like me who tell the truth to the elders, we're the ones who suffer. We're the ones who get shunned and disciplined and treated like we're unworthy and less than human. But it just gives you another reason to not want to go back to the organization. I don't want to go back to an organization that punishes the victims of the abusers that they protect. It just doesn't make any sense. So I want you to know that in the time since I made my last video, I've been trying to move on with my life. And it takes a real effort to not look at JW.org stuff. You know, I had to leave a lot of groups on Facebook, unfollow a lot of people on Twitter and in YouTube, and really make an effort to stay away from JW.org, because it's not that I like JW.org, but you make friends outside of the organization and you get used to just thinking about the stupidities and laughing at it. And I just felt like, you know, it's time to move on from all that. As you know, I made a whole video about this. So, but the one thing that's been difficult to ignore is this coronavirus. And one thing I did see online was what JW.org is saying about this, and how they're saying that it's, you know, a sign that we're living in the time of the end, which is of course what they would say, which is really sad, because so they're not having, apparently they've stopped their meetings from what I understand, and their field service. And I'm hoping that the people who are no longer going to these meetings are going to wake up to some extent, because once you've got a break from the indoctrination, you tend to wake up. So I'm hoping that's what's going to happen. On the other hand, people might just dig in deeper, because once you're told that this is a sign of the end, you know, it gets people all freaking out, and it gets them wondering, you know, when the end's coming and all this kind of stuff. So we'll have to wait and see what actually happens. But I was asked by a witness, you know, aren't you afraid that with this coronavirus that it's a sign that we're, you know, it's part of the pestilence that was foretold, and it's a sign that we're living in the time of the end? And I'm like, no, I'm not even remotely worried that it means that we're in the time of the end. I go, let me ask you something. So when this coronavirus passes and we all get on with our lives, will you then finally admit that we're not living in the time of the end? And they're like, no. No, of course they won't. And I already knew the answer, but I was hoping they would get them thinking, because what they end up doing inevitably is finding the next thing, the next earthquake, or the next whatever that happens in the world that triggers their freak out idea that the world is about to end. It's never going to end, so to speak. That they're always going to be looking for something. They're like a scientist who comes up with a theory and ignores all the evidence because he's so hell-bent on proving his theory right, and all he sees is what he wants to see. And that's JW.org. There's always going to be bad things happening in the world. Just look at the history of mankind. But it doesn't mean that we're living in the last days, you know? But that's, again, that's what they want to see. And it's not healthy to live this way. You're living with a bunker mentality. You know, you meet people that say, I'm a 5th generation Jehovah's Witness. And you're thinking, well, that's weird. You know, I thought the end was supposed to come within one generation. But it doesn't. It just keeps going on and overlapping, and supposedly. And my friend Andrea, who's been in some of my videos, who you may know, we had this hilarious conversation where she was saying to me that she has a theory that Jehovah's Witnesses age much faster than non-Jehovah's Witnesses. You know, because they're living with this idea that the end is always coming. I mean, it's not a bad theory when you think about it, because there have been studies done on mice. It's actually a horrible thing. Anytime you do, you know, tests on animals, it's awful. But I know one thing that they did is they took a mouse or mice or whatever, and they would throw them in front of a cat repeatedly, every day. And mice who are living in this terrified state don't live as long as a normal mouse who leads a normal life. So it only makes sense that when you're living with a bunker mentality, where you've got, you know, the end, you know, being held over your head all the time, that it's going to have an effect on you. I mean, how many Jehovah's Witnesses do you know are on antidepressants? You know, because they can't face the facts. Face the facts, you know, that Charles Russell said, or Rutherford, or whoever. So she had this idea that they age faster, and she goes, yeah, look at some of them. So while we were chatting, I started looking up somebody, and it just so happened that the guy I was looking up was her prom date, when, you know, way back when she went to her grad. And he looked so old. Now, I'm not saying this to make fun of him in any way. He was actually a very nice guy, and I don't know what he's like now, but I happen to know he's still a JW. But in the picture, he had aged so much. Like, he looked like somebody's grandfather. And when I showed Andrea, I go, oh my God, look at him. She's like, oh my God! She screams into the phone, and we're like, wow, you know, she was so shocked. And then I quickly put together her picture from her profile in Facebook or whatever, and his picture. I kind of mashed it together and said, oh, don't worry, I found your grad picture. And she looks amazing. And he has aged horribly. I mean, what do you think? What is your theory on this? Do you feel that Jehovah's Witnesses age faster? At any rate, let me know what you think of this theory that JWs age faster than non-JWs. So I think I've answered your question that when you leave the religion, you're left to die, basically. You're treated as if you are dead, and there's no contact with you, and there's not even an effort to try to bring you back in. So it's not like I didn't already know that, but some of you may not realize the diabolical nature of this organization. And it's just to say that it's best just to get on with your life and not look back. It can be hard, you know, like it was in my situation when you've got to go back to where it all happened. It's hard not to think about these memories, and it's hard not to run into these people. But it is what it is. And all you can do is live your best life and not be concerned about them. I do hope that they come out. You know, I really do. So I've really enjoyed this time thinking about you guys and the time that we were able to spend together during this video. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're all washing your hands and looking after yourselves. I don't know when I'm going to make another video, but just so you know, I'm doing well. I'm trying to get on with my life. Try not to think about JW.org, and just trying to be happy, you know, as I hope you are as well. Okay, so take it easy, and bye-bye for now.